Most trades businesses do not lose jobs because their price is too high. They lose them between the call, the quote, and the follow-up. In this video, I am going to show you where that admin gap actually sits, how AI can now remove part of it, and how to tell if it would pay for itself in your business. If you run a plumbing, electrical, HVAC, or building business, there is a good chance you think your main growth problem is leads. Sometimes it is, but a lot of the time, the real leak is what happens after the enquiry comes in. The call gets missed, the site notes sit in WhatsApp, the measurements are in a photo, the quote draft is half in someone's head and half in an email. Then nobody follows up quickly enough and the job cools off. That is what this video is about. Not AI for the sake of AI. I want to show you where AI quote extraction and follow-up automation can actually help a trades business move faster, reduce admin, and win more booked jobs without turning your workflow upside down. What changed is not that trades businesses suddenly need more software. What changed is that the tools are getting better at handling messy real-world inputs. A year or two ago, most automation only worked if everything was neat and structured already. Now, you can have a system that reads a site survey, a message thread, a PDF, or a rough set of notes, pulls out the useful information, and moves it into the right place for the next step. That matters because quoting is where a lot of small trades businesses slow down. And when quoting slows down, follow-up slows down. And when follow-up slows down, jobs go elsewhere. Most owners think the issue is, we just need someone to get through more admin. Sometimes that is true. But very often, the real problem is that the admin is scattered across too many places. The enquiry comes in by phone. The details get sent on WhatsApp. Someone takes photos on site. A measurement goes into a notebook. The customer asks for an updated option by email. Then somebody has to turn all of that into a quote. Send it, remember to chase it, and keep the CRM or job system up to date. That is not one task. That is 6 little handoffs. And every handoff creates delay, errors, or silence. This is the part most people underestimate. Trades businesses often do not lose work at the point of demand. They lose work in the quiet gap after interest is already there. The customer did call. The customer did ask for a quote. The customer was interested enough to send details, but the quote went out too late. Or it went out without a proper follow-up. Or it went out but no one logged the next action. So when people ask whether AI quote extraction is worth it, I do not start with the tool. I start with one question. How many quotes went stale last month because your process relied on somebody remembering to do 3 extra admin steps after the job itself? Let me make this practical. When I say AI quote extraction, I do not mean some magic robot that runs your whole business. I mean a narrow agentic system that does one useful job well. For example, it reads incoming documents, screenshots, survey notes, or job sheets. It turns those details into a structured format. Then it passes them into your spreadsheet, CRM, quoting template, or job management system. That means your team is not spending time copying the same information from one place to another. And more importantly, the next step can happen faster. The quote gets drafted faster. The follow-up gets triggered faster. The pipeline stays cleaner. This is also where people get nervous, and fairly so. You do not want AI guessing final price, scope, or commercial judgment if the job is complex. That part should still stay human. The owner, estimator, or office manager should still decide the final quote value, the margin, the unusual scope, the exceptions, and whether a lead is worth prioritizing. What the system should remove is the repetitive work around those decisions. Reading messy inputs, structuring the information, logging the record, triggering reminders, flagging stale quotes. That is the difference between replacing judgment and removing friction. So here is what this might look like in a real trades business. A new inquiry comes in. The customer sends photos and a short description. A team member adds a few notes after the call. The system reads all of that, extracts the relevant job details, and creates a structured quote prep record. That record lands in the quoting system or spreadsheet. If the quote has not been sent within the target window, the system flags it. Once the quote goes out, a follow-up reminder is created automatically. If there's no response after a defined period, the next action is queued instead of being left to memory. That kind of setup does not make the business cleverer. It makes the business less dependent on scattered copy and paste admin. If you want the checklist I use to spot where quotes and follow-up are going stale, DM me QuoteFlow on Instagram and I will send it over. Usually, the answer is yes, but not because the AI itself is impressive. It pays back in 3 places. First, speed. If your quotes go out faster, you stay closer to the moment of intent. Second, consistency. If every quote gets logged and followed up properly, fewer opportunities go cold for no reason. Third, owner time. If you or your admin team stop retyping the same information across 3 systems, you get time back for actual commercial work. So the ROI question is not, can AI write a quote? The better question is, how much booked work are we losing because our quote workflow is still held together by memory, messages, and manual re-entry? A few honest objections here. First, if your process is total chaos, AI will not magically fix that on day 1. You still need a basic workflow. Second, if your quote inputs are wildly inconsistent, you may need a small amount of setup before the system becomes reliable. Third, not every business needs this immediately. If your quote volume is low and your turnaround is already tight, the gain may be modest. But if you are running enough inquiries that quote delays, admin lag, or poor follow-up are already costing you work, this becomes a much more serious conversation. And fourth, no, you do not necessarily need a massive CRM project first. In plenty of cases, the first win is smaller than that. Just getting quote data structured properly and follow-up triggered on time can already move the needle. So if you run a trades business, the place I would look first is not, which AI tool should I buy? It is this. Where exactly does a live inquiry become a slow quote? And where does that slow quote become a lost job? That is the bottleneck you want to measure. If you want, DM me QuoteFlow on Instagram, and I will send you the trades quote follow-up audit. It is a simple checklist you can use to spot where quote admin, delayed follow-up, and messy handoffs are costing you booked work. Once you can see the leak clearly, then you can decide what should stay manual, what should be automated, and what would actually pay for itself.